The city was the kind that never really slept, but even its noise took a breath when the rain fell like this soft, uninterrupted steady as thought. The streets gleamed under orange street lamps, every puddle a trembling echo of light. The stone plaza behind the municipal courthouse, usually filled with hurried steps and lunchtime chatter, was nearly empty now. Nearly. He didn't notice the girl right away. She was tucked into the far curve of the fountain, where one of the marble lions had long ago stopped spouting water. Her coat, if it could still be called, that was 3 shades darker from the rain, and at least 2 sizes too large. The sleeves had been rolled to her elbows with twine. Her knees were bare and scraped, her toes curled on the cold stone. She held a paper cup in both hands, elbows resting on her lap, like she was praying over it. But she wasn't asking for anything aloud. She was humming. He only noticed her because of that sound, not loud, not forced, just the kind of quiet that carried in a place meant to be loud. It was a lullaby, a real one, not something from a cartoon or a phone, but the kind someone sang from memory. The man Emory Grant, CEO of a tech firm with 5 active lawsuits and $2 billion in market cap, was already halfway past the fountain before his footsteps slowed. His driver had just texted that the car was ready. The rain had found his shoulders even under the umbrella. He didn't know why he turned. And then she spoke. "Sir." Her voice was hoarse, not with illness, but with effort. "I don't want money. I just want something warm for my brother." That stopped him. Not her words exactly, but the way she said them, as if it cost her something. She didn't look at him while she said it. She didn't even raise the cup. Emory looked down. Beneath the girl's coat, barely visible, was a plastic grocery bag. Inside, wrapped in a threadbare scarf, was a younger child. A boy, maybe 4, fast asleep despite the chill. His head was tilted sideways, pressed against a rolled sweater. The girl noticed him staring and shifted, tucking her brother closer. He sleeps through everything she said, almost apologizing. Even thunder. Emory didn't speak. The last child he had a real conversation with had been over a decade ago, his niece who now lived in Germany and only emailed on holidays. Kids made him uncomfortable, not out of cruelty, but out of the quiet guilt that came from forgetting how to be kind without a purpose. The girl smiled, faint but real. "We like the sound here. It makes it feel like we're not alone." He didn't mean to sit, but he did. Just for a moment. The cold of the stone went through his suit immediately, but he stayed. Something in the melody lingered in his mind like vapor, ungraspable but familiar. "Where did you learn that song?" he asked. She looked down at her brother. "Our mom. She used to hum it every night. She said it kept the bad things out of our dreams." "Where is she now?" he asked, before realizing how abrupt it sounded. The girl shrugged, then gave a small shake of the head. She was very tired for a long time. Then she stopped waking up. Emory exhaled slowly. The air around him had changed. He didn't know why he felt the urge to check his wristwatch. He wasn't late for anything, but something inside him whispered that he had already missed something. The girl reached into her coat again and gently pressed a cracked plastic music box against her brother's side. It didn't play anymore, but she held it like it might remember how. "My name's Nia," she said. "His is Sam." Emory opened his wallet, pure habit, and paused. His fingers passed the crisp $100 bills, the corporate cards, the business receipts. Instead, he pulled out a small foil-wrapped protein bar he'd grabbed from the hotel minibar and hadn't eaten. She looked at it, then nodded politely, accepting it like an adult at a formal dinner. "You don't have to stay," she said, her voice polite. "Most people don't." The wind picked up a little. The fountain's sound deepened. Behind them, the city kept on moving its windows, glowing with lives untouched by theirs. He stood slowly, unsure whether he was doing it to leave or to gather his thoughts. She didn't say anything more, but as he turned, she started humming again. The same tune. Just slightly louder now, not enough to be bold, just enough to make sure he remembered. He took 3 steps, then paused. He hadn't felt this still in years. Across the street, his driver remained parked with the hazards blinking, waiting for the version of Emory Grant, who never missed a meeting, never changed his mind, never turned around. But tonight he lingered. The next morning, Emory Grant sat in a boardroom surrounded by men who used words like agile scalability and post-crisis leverage. He stared through them, not out of arrogance, but because his mind wasn't in the room. He was thinking about the girl, about the cracked music box, about the way she hadn't flinched or begged. She had just waited, calmly, as if the world was always too slow to help her, and she'd stopped expecting it to. "Mr. Grant," someone asked. He blinked. "Yes." "Your signature on the restructuring packet." He signed it without reading. The pen felt too heavy. Later in the car, he asked the driver Calvin to circle back through the municipal district. Just take the long way, around the courthouse. Calvin didn't ask why. He'd been with Emery long enough to know better. The rain from the night before had dried, but the sky was still pewter-colored. Pigeons clung to lampposts. The fountain was dry again, its shallow basin glinting with litter and bottle caps. The bench was empty. No girl, no little brother, no sound. He wasn't sure why that felt like a loss. His eyes dropped to the curb where she'd sat. A paper cup lay sideways, its rim darkened by water. Emery stepped out of the car and picked it up before he could think better of it. It was crushed slightly, but not torn. Inside, folded carefully like a note, was the protein bar wrapper. No money, no change. He frowned, confused. He'd given her the bar, not money. Had he, or did he imagine that part? He turned it over. On the wrapper's silver lining, written in purple crayon, were 5 words. "We don't take what's extra." His breath caught. It wasn't indignation, it was clarity. A line someone taught her, a rule, a philosophy. Something pure and maybe impossible. He slid the wrapper into his coat pocket and returned to the car. That evening back in his penthouse, he opened the drawer he hadn't opened in years. It was the small one, the shallow one beside his desk. Inside was an old pocket watch, tarnished but functional. It had been a gift from his sister decades ago when she'd been 19 and full of belief that her brother could be something other than cold and sharp. On the back was a hand engraving she'd commissioned, one he never really paid attention to. He turned it now. It read, "Keep the song safe." He stared. The phrase was so odd it didn't register at first. Then it clicked. The lullaby. The melody the girl had hummed. The same one his sister used to play on her cheap keyboard every Sunday afternoon when their parents fought in the kitchen. He hadn't thought of it in over 20 years. He brought the watch to his ear. Tick, tick. Then on impulse he wound it, just once. The melody box inside, long dormant, let out a brittle chime. Just one. The echo of a tune. It was the same. It wasn't similar. It was identical. He sank back in his chair, and for the first time in a long while, Emery Grant let himself feel uncertain. The next day he returned, not to the fountain this time, but to the alley behind the church nearby. A street vendor had mentioned it in passing when Emery asked if he'd seen a girl with a music box and a little brother. "You mean the humming kid," the man had said. "She sleeps near the metal bins, only when it rains." Emery turned the corner. The air was thick with the smell of fried dough dust and faint incense drifting from the church. There on a bench in the shadow of a rusted swing set was Naya. Same coat, same posture. She was cutting a sandwich into perfect halves. Sitting beside her was the boy Sam, still quiet but awake this time, eyes big curious, clutching a stuffed giraffe missing one ear. Nia saw him. She didn't flinch. She didn't smile either. She just looked at him like she had known he'd come back, like it didn't surprise her. "We found another wrapper," she said, holding up a different one. "We'll use it to patch Sam's shoe." He didn't speak at first. Then quietly he said, "Do you remember what you were humming?" She nodded. "Mom's song. We call it the Safe Dream song." He held up the pocket watch. Let it chime once. Her face changed. Her fingers curled slightly, not in fear but recognition. "My mom had a watch like that. Hers didn't play anymore." He sat on the opposite end of the bench. Not close, just there. Sam leaned into Naya's side and whispered something. He asked if you're the man from the fountain, she translated. "I am," Emery said. "Then I guess we trust you." It wasn't much, but it was more than he'd earned. The swing set behind the church was rusted through in the middle, its seats crooked on brittle chains. Grass had long surrendered to dirt, and the bench Nia and Sam sat on tilted slightly left, like it was exhausted. But for them, it was home. Emery didn't say much the first few minutes. He watched, observed. He had always been good at noticing inefficiencies, flaws, patterns that broke the machine. But this was different. This wasn't a spreadsheet or supply chain. This was 2 children surviving a life that seemed designed to forget them. Nia reached into her backpack, a faded green canvas sack, and pulled out a folded paper napkin. She unwrapped a second sandwich, this one, looking like it had been pressed between books for hours. She handed it to Sam, who bit into it gratefully, and smiled with mayonnaise on his cheek. "You don't have to sit here, you know," she said, glancing at Emery. "I know. People don't usually stay once they find out we're not selling anything." He allowed a small smile. "I'm not buying anything either." She tilted her head slightly as if trying to figure him out. "Then, what do you want?" He didn't answer right away. His gaze dropped to Sam, who had now finished his sandwich and was carefully wrapping the napkin back up, as if it were important. "I'm not sure yet," Emery said honestly. "I just keep thinking about your song." Nia shrugged. "It's just a lullaby." "No," he said almost too quickly. It's one I knew a long time ago." She said nothing, but her eyes held a question she didn't voice. He reached into his pocket and held out the protein bar wrapper, the one with her handwriting. Her eyes widened. "You kept it." He nodded. Sam reached out a hand toward it. Emery leaned down and let the boy touch the wrapper like it was something sacred. Nia gave her brother a soft nudge. "He likes paper things. He pretends they're treasure maps." Emery raised an eyebrow. "Maps to where?" "Warm places," Nia said. A beat of silence followed. Behind them, the church bells rang out the hour, a sound too grand for a place this forgotten. A few minutes later, Nia stood and walked toward a low brick wall at the edge of the playground. Emery followed at a respectful distance. She pointed to a small piece of cardboard taped to the wall. It read, "Don't worry, I'll try harder tomorrow." The handwriting was uneven but careful. "That's for Mom," she said. "She used to write us notes like that. When she was sick, I started writing them back." Emery's chest tightened. It was the kind of gesture that adults never noticed, the kind children made when they were quietly falling apart, but still pretending they weren't. "She passed away?" he asked gently. Nia nodded. Sam was playing now, dragging a twig through the dirt to make circles. "She got sick and didn't have papers, so the hospital said it wasn't their responsibility. By the time someone agreed to help, it was too late." Emery said nothing. "I was mad for a while," she added, "but not anymore. She told me not to blame people, just to stay kind." He swallowed hard. How did a girl with so little hold on to something so generous? He stepped back, looking around. Behind the church was a dumpster. A foldable cot leaned against it, a tarp tucked beneath. It wasn't shelter. It was permission to survive one more night. He didn't ask how long they'd been there. He didn't want the answer. Nia sat back down beside Sam. "We have a little system now. Breakfast from the bakery if they have leftovers. Afternoons here. And if it rains, we move to the library steps." She said it like it was a schedule, like she was proud of the rhythm she'd carved out of scraps. "You shouldn't have to plan your life like this," Emery said. "I'd rather plan than wait." He was quiet again. His phone buzzed, a meeting reminder. He ignored it. Instead, he asked softly, "Is there anything you need?" Nia looked at him for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable. Then she said, "A blanket that doesn't smell like mold, and a pencil that's not broken." He blinked. "I don't like markers," she added. "They're loud. Pencils are quieter." He nodded. "I can bring those." She hesitated. "If you want to." A quiet trust had formed, not an embrace but a thread. Emery reached into his wallet. He didn't offer cash this time. He pulled out a business card, then thought better of it and tucked it back. "Tomorrow," he said instead. "I'll come by, if that's all right." Nia shrugged, but her lips tilted upward. "Okay, but don't be late. Sam gets grumpy before lunch." He arrived the next day just before noon, carrying a canvas tote. He'd packed himself an odd act for someone who hadn't done his own packing in years. It held 2 thermal blankets, a set of freshly sharpened pencils, a notebook with thick cream-colored pages, and 2 small sandwiches from the cafe in his building, wrapped in wax paper and tied with red twine like little gifts. But when Emery turned the corner behind the church, the bench was empty. The note was still there, fluttering against the brick. So was the cot folded neatly. But the children were gone. He sat down, tote still clutched in his lap. He checked his phone. No messages, of course. He hadn't given them a number. Just a promise. A soft, strange promise he'd made to a pair of children he barely knew. And now, here he was, absurdly early, absurdly concerned, and unsure what to do with the silence. After 20 minutes, he stood and started walking toward the front of the church, hoping someone had seen them. That's when he heard the laughter. It came from the alley beside the library, a thin passageway framed by chain-link fencing and broken tile. 2 giggles staggered in rhythm. He followed the sound. At the end of the alley was a door slightly ajar, and beside it a narrow patch of grass where a pop-up table had been set. A small community lunch program, volunteer run. A folding card read, "Free lunch, all welcome," in faded red paint. And there they were. Nia and Sam sat at the end of the row, eating crackers and apple slices off paper plates. Their coats hung behind them like flags. Nia's cheeks were flushed. Sam had his toy giraffe tucked under his arm, and he was grinning up at a volunteer who had given him an extra apple. Emery didn't approach immediately. He stood by the exit sign near the back and watched half-hidden, unsure why he felt so cautious. That's when Nia looked up and saw him. She didn't wave. She didn't smile, but she tilted her head as if to say, "You're late." He walked toward them, carefully tote in hand. "Sorry," he said, sitting across the table. "I took the long way." "Sam wanted to come here today," she replied, lifting her chin. "It's Friday. The apple lady is here." Sam held up his fruit like a trophy. "I brought something," Emery said, sliding the tote across the table. Nia opened it slowly. When she saw the notebooks and pencils, her hands paused. She ran her fingers over the cover of the notebook, thick paper, no lines. Her expression changed. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. "I didn't expect it to be this nice," she said quietly. "You said you liked pencils," he said. "I do. They don't leak." Sam pulled out one of the blankets, buried his face in it, and declared, "It smells like clouds." They both laughed. Even Emery smiled. It was the first time he'd actually laughed in months, maybe longer. It felt foreign in his chest. Nia reached into the bag again and pulled out one of the sandwiches. She held it up like it was fragile. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." She nodded, unwrapped it slowly, and split it in half. She gave one piece to Sam before even tasting her own. Then, as if remembering something, she looked up and said, "You really don't want anything?" Emery shook his head. "Not even a thank you. I didn't come for thanks." She studied him. "Most people only help once." He answered honestly, "I don't want to be most people." There was a quiet after that, not uncomfortable, just weighty, like something unspoken had passed between them. Nia reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded scrap of paper. She opened it, revealing a child's drawing. 2 trees, a sun, a girl, a boy, and a man with a tie, all holding hands. At the bottom, in purple crayon, were the words, "You can sit with us again." She slid it across the table to him. He took it, and for a moment, he didn't feel like a CEO, or a donor, or a man who'd spent his life building things only to fill silence with more silence. He felt seen. Sam leaned forward suddenly. "Are you our new friend?" Emery nodded. "I think so." Nia didn't say anything more. She just pulled her plate closer and began to eat. And across the street past the alley, his car idled quietly, its driver checking his watch. But Emery didn't glance that way. Not once. That night, Emery didn't go back to his penthouse right away. He had the car drop him off near the Riverwalk instead. It was quieter there, the kind of quiet that made people slower, gentler. He walked the length of the embankment with his hands in his coat pockets, the crayon drawing folded neatly in his wallet, where his platinum cards used to go. The drawing stayed with him. So did the melody. As he moved beneath dim street lamps and past couples walking dogs or pushing strollers, the lullaby returned, threading through his memory like it had been waiting all these years. He could hear his sister playing it on that old keyboard with the sticky B-flat key, humming it absent-mindedly while she studied on the floor. He stopped at a bench near the water, sat down and pulled out the pocket watch again. It had tarnished along the edge. His sister had given it to him before her final move abroad, when they were both still young enough to believe that distance didn't hurt. Back then, he had treated the gift like an antique, pretty, impractical, sentimental. Now it felt like a thread. He wound it once. The tiny chime played brittle and short. It was enough. Oh, the next morning, Emery canceled a meeting without an excuse. His assistant sent back, "3 are you sure?" Messages then finally replied, "Understood." He spent the next 2 hours combing through his storage unit, something he hadn't visited in nearly 6 years. He found the box on the 3rd shelf behind an unused treadmill and 2 unopened crates of promotional mugs. It was labeled, "Jamie, Childhood Stuff." Inside, beneath a stack of children's books and old sheet music, was a videotape in a plastic sleeve. No label, just a blue sticker on the edge. He rented a player from a vintage electronics store. It took 30 minutes to hook up, and when he pressed play, there she was. Jamie, 19, curly hair in a bun, wearing that sweater with the missing sleeve button, sitting on their childhood living room floor playing a tune on her keyboard. That tune. His throat closed as he watched her turn to the camera, smile, and say, "For Emery. Keep the song safe." He paused the screen, her face frozen mid-laugh. How had he forgotten this? Not just the song, but the promise. The sense that something delicate was his to carry forward. Maybe it hadn't mattered until now. Maybe it hadn't had a place to land until a girl on a fountain whispered that same melody into a rainy night. Oh, he returned to the park that afternoon. This time, Nia and Sam were already there, sitting under a tree drawing in the notebook he'd given them. The blanket he brought was spread across the grass like a picnic mat. They had crackers and an empty juice carton and what looked like a sandwich they had shared. They looked up when he approached, and Sam grinned first. "You came back," the boy said, as if surprised. "I said I would." Nia gave him a small nod. "We started early today. It's library day." "What's on the list?" Emery asked, sitting down on the edge of the blanket. "Books about birds," Nia said. "Sam thinks crows are smart." Sam nodded vigorously. "They steal shiny things, like in treasure hunts." Emery smiled. "They do. They remember faces too." "Like me," Sam added proudly. "I don't forget people." Emery looked at Nia. "He's not wrong?" Nia opened her notebook, flipping to a page where she had drawn the same scene 3 times. A man in a coat sitting on a bench with 2 kids beside him. Each drawing had more detail than the last. "I draw things that might go away," she said, not looking up. "Does that help?" "Sometimes." He pulled out the pocket watch and held it in his palm. Nia's eyes flicked to it. Then he played the chime, just once. The note echoed between them. Sam's hand tightened around his giraffe. "That's the song," he whispered. "Yes," Emery said. "My sister used to play it. She gave me this watch." "What was her name?" Nia asked. "Jamie." Nia nodded. She must have been kind. She was. She believed in soft things. I didn't understand it then. He didn't say the rest. That he had traded soft things for hard edges. That he'd mistaken silence for strength. That he hadn't protected the song the way he should have until now. It was Sunday when Emery brought the manila envelope. He arrived earlier than usual, walking the block behind the church in soft steps, wearing a jacket that was slightly too casual for a CEO. He passed the rusted swing set, the taped-up cardboard note still fluttering behind the bench. In his hand was the envelope thick with papers neatly folded, freshly notarized. But today Nia and Sam weren't alone. A woman stood nearby, speaking softly to Nia by the brick wall. Her coat was threadbare at the sleeves, and her hair was pulled back with a rubber band. She looked tired, not just from lack of sleep, but from the kind of fatigue that lives in the bones after months of holding a family together with thread. Emery slowed his steps. This must be the mother. He hadn't asked before if she was still alive, if she was still part of their orbit. But here she was, not absent at all, just hidden behind the veil of surviving. Nia turned first. Her face didn't brighten like it had the past few days. She looked uncertain. The woman followed her gaze and tensed the moment she saw him. Emery approached slowly. "Hello." The woman's voice was level, not rude but guarded. "You're the man from the park." "Yes. You've been giving them things." "I have." She glanced down at the notebook peeking out of Nia's coat. "Why?" Emery didn't flinch. "Because they matter." The woman narrowed her eyes. "Men don't help for nothing." He nodded, accepting the suspicion without protest. "You're right to be cautious, but I'm not here to take anything." She crossed her arms. "Are you a social worker? Lawyer?" "No, just someone who recognized the song your daughter sings." At that, her posture shifted slightly. Nia said quietly, "Mom, he knows the Safe Dream song. His sister taught it to him." The woman looked at Emery more closely now, like trying to read something on his skin. He handed her the envelope. She didn't take it. "What is it?" she asked. "Temporary shelter, a small fund for supplies, and an offer of work. Not through a charity, through a friend of mine. Quiet. No press, no obligations." She still didn't touch the envelope. "I don't want to owe anyone," she said. "You won't. Don't make it sound like charity." "It's not." She looked at Nia, then Sam, who was sitting cross-legged on the blanket coloring in a book with his tongue between his teeth. Then she turned back to Emery. "My name's Marisol." He nodded. "Emery." She finally took the envelope. "If I even get a whiff that this is about looking good for a magazine." "It's not," he said firmly. "I don't do interviews." She exhaled through her nose, then sat down on the edge of the bench with the heaviness of someone who doesn't sit often enough. She opened the envelope, slowly scanning the contents. Nia stood beside Emery now. "She doesn't trust easy," the girl whispered. "She shouldn't," he replied. They watched her flip through the pages. No expression. Then, who filled out the form for the kids? "I did." "You guessed their last name." I asked the librarian. Marisol let out a small, almost inaudible laugh. Not warm, but not cold either. Persistent. Emery didn't reply. He waited. She folded the papers back inside and tucked them into her coat. "I'll think about it." "That's enough," he said. Sam came running over, then holding up a rock shaped vaguely like a heart. "I found treasure." Everyone looked down at it. Marisol gave a small, tired smile. And Emery knelt slowly beside Sam. "Then I guess today's a lucky day." Later, as the sun dipped behind the church steeple, Marisol pulled Nia aside to whisper something. Nia nodded, then ran to catch up with Emery, who was standing beneath the tree where the drawings usually happened. My mom said. She hesitated, then looked at him with something like embarrassment. Thank you. He crouched so he was at eye level. I didn't do it for thanks. I know. But she needed to say it, even if she didn't want to. Emery smiled. You're good at translating people. She tilted her head. Maybe that's my superpower. He looked at her notebook, then at her. No, he said gently. That's just one of them. By Tuesday, the shelter papers had been signed. Marisol, Nia, and Sam were offered a temporary room. Through a private arrangement, Emery had quietly brokered no media, no agency overhead, no public record. The building itself was modest, a converted rectory with pale blue shutters and a shared kitchen where the scent of warm soup seemed to linger in the air, even when the pot was cold. It should have been a relief. And yet, when Emery stopped by that afternoon with a small bag of art supplies for Nia, the air felt different, tighter. He knocked on the side door just as he had the last time. Sam opened it this time, his face lighting up instantly. He's here! He brought the colors! Nia appeared a moment later, not running, not smiling. She stepped into the hallway with her arms crossed, closing the door softly behind her. You shouldn't come today, she said. Emery blinked. Is everything all right? She shrugged. Mom's angry about the paperwork. She said it felt like a trick. It wasn't. I know. But she's afraid. Nia looked down. When people give you things, they can take them away. He understood. Maybe too well. He had once built an entire venture with a friend who promised to stay through every storm only to watch the same man sell their company's heart to the highest bidder. Did I make things worse? Emery asked softly. Nia shook her head. You made them unsure. That's worse than angry. A silence stretched between them. The hallway light flickered above. He crouched slightly to meet her eyes. I didn't mean to cross a line. She didn't reply. Instead, she held out her hand. He placed the small bag of art supplies in her palm, 2 sketch pads, a box of colored pencils, and a folded note he'd written at 2 a.m. It simply read, Draw what feels too heavy to say. She looked at it, then quietly said, You don't have to keep showing up. I know, but you still will. He nodded. Then she surprised him. She stepped forward and hugged him briefly tightly. No words. Just a pulse of warmth that reminded him of something he couldn't name. When she pulled back, she said, We'll call you, but not today. He accepted that. Sometimes backing away was the kindest thing he could do. Later that night, Emery sat alone on his balcony overlooking the city skyline. He held his sister's pocket watch, the ticking quieter now, as if it too understood this was a day not to push forward. He thought of all the ways he'd misread people in his life. Employees, partners, friends. How easy it was to mistake gratitude for loyalty, fear for respect, silence for acceptance. But Nia wasn't silent. She was deliberate, just like Jamie had been. His sister used to warn him, don't mistake giving for listening. Sometimes people just need space, not saving. Now he heard those words again, not from the past, but in Nia's steady voice echoing down the hall. He stood and walked back inside. On the table was the crayon drawing she'd given him days ago. He placed the note beside it. 2 messages, one from her, one to her. He didn't know if she'd read his. He didn't need to know. Some things weren't about answers. They were about showing up and knowing when to leave the door gently open. 3 days passed without a word. Emery didn't text, didn't drive by, didn't hover. He wanted to. But something about Nia's last glance at him, firm but not unkind, told him that to intrude now would mean erasing the very trust she had been brave enough to offer. Still, each day he laid out 2 pencils and a blank index card on the edge of his desk, a quiet signal to himself they are still there. On the 4th day, he found an envelope tucked into the drop box of his building's lobby. No postage, just his name written in a child's careful cursive. He opened it slowly, already holding his breath. Inside was a single sketch, pencil on soft paper. It showed the park bench behind the courthouse, but with a difference: there were no figures on it. Just 3 objects, a paper cup, a broken toy giraffe, and a pocket watch resting in the center. No people, just symbols of what had passed through. At the bottom, in light pencil strokes, was a sentence. We know you're still listening. He exhaled the kind of breath that stayed lodged deep for years before finding its way out. The following Sunday, the shelter's weekly art class met in the garden. Volunteers brought chalk and fruit and folding chairs. Most of the kids scribbled rainbows or suns with smiling faces. But Nia sat off to the side, sketching quietly in her own notebook, the one Emery had given her. When he arrived, she didn't look up, but she didn't hide the page either. He took a seat on a wooden crate near her, not too close, and waited. After a minute, she handed him the book. She had drawn him, not how he appeared, but how he sat. Back slightly hunched, hands in his lap, eyes tired but kind. The background was soft abstract, but the edges of his suit blurred into the bench as though he belonged there now, not just visited. He turned to her. "You draw things that might go away," he said, recalling her words. She shrugged. "Sometimes they stay." Behind them, Sam was showing Marisol how to build a leaf tower using sticks and dandelions. The boy laughed loudly, a sound that made Marisol's shoulders relax for the first time all week. "I wanted to ask something," Nia said after a while, "but only if you promise to answer honestly." He nodded. "All right. Why did you help us?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "Because the song you hummed reminded me of someone I loved and didn't know how to hold on to. And because when you asked for something warm, not something easy, it made me remember how little kindness costs and how expensive it feels when you've gone too long without it." She said nothing for a long time. Then my mom said if people give with their name on it, it means they want credit. But if they give and walk away, it's a gift. "What do you think I did?" he asked gently. "You stayed," she said. "But you didn't ask to be thanked, so I think it was almost a gift." "Almost?" She smirked. "You still dress like someone who owns 7 watches." He laughed soft and real. Then he reached into his pocket and held out a new item. Not the old watch this time, but a small tin box. Inside a music chip sat nestled between velvet. "It plays the melody," he said, "but with a twist. My sister's version recorded, from an old video." Nia's face didn't change much, but her fingers hovered over the tin like it was a relic. "For us," she asked, "for safekeeping." She took it without ceremony and placed it in her coat pocket like it had always belonged there. Behind them, Marisol looked over and gave a small nod, barely perceptible, but enough. It wasn't approval. It was something quieter, permission. That night, Emery returned home and placed her drawing of the bench on the wall above his desk. No frame, no spotlight, just tape. He looked at it often now, especially on nights the city outside his window blurred into 1,000 silent lives. The kind of nights when money meant less and melody meant more. The next time Emery visited the park, he brought no gifts, no notebooks, no food, just himself. It was nearing dusk. The sky above the courthouse plaza was painted in soft streaks of apricot and violet, the kind of light that made even cracked sidewalks look tender. The fountain gurgled gently, and a warm breeze stirred the paper leaves still taped to the brick wall behind the church. He spotted Nia first curled cross-legged on the bench sketchbook, in lap pencil, tapping her lip. Sam sat nearby, holding his stuffed giraffe like a field commander, surveying a battlefield of pigeons. Emery walked slowly with the ease of someone who no longer needed to announce his presence. "Hey," Nia said, without looking up. "You're late." "I came when the sun got nice," he said. She grinned. "Fair." He sat beside her. "How's the drawing going?" "I'm stuck on the hands. They always look stiff." "Let me see." She turned the sketchbook toward him. It was a drawing of Marisol, her mother, sitting on the bench with her eyes closed, sunlight on her face, Sam in her lap. It wasn't finished, but the softness in the lines told him everything. Nia saw her mother not as tired or angry, but at peace. "You're getting better," he said. She shrugged. "Practice." He leaned back, hands in his lap. A few minutes passed like that, quiet but full. Then Nia said, "We're moving soon." His head turned. "To where?" "There's a woman from the shelter. She runs a co-op farm upstate. She said we can stay help with the gardens. Mom likes the idea." Emery smiled faintly. "Will you miss the city?" "Only the parts that listened," she said, then looked up at him. "That includes you." He didn't reply right away. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope, just a note card really. Inside a printed certificate bearing Sam and Nia's names. It wasn't an award. It wasn't official. It was a library card. One he'd had reissued in both their names, attached to a lifetime account, and already linked to 3 city libraries. "Just in case you come back," he said. Nia held it delicately. "Thank you," she whispered. Sam ran over then, as if summoned by a breeze. "Can we go to the fountain?" Nia nodded. Emery stood. Together they walked across the square, the air cooler, now the light gentler. Sam reached the fountain first and began collecting pebbles from its edge. He arranged them in a circle, muttering to himself about pirates and treasure maps. "Do you know why I kept coming back?" Emery asked Nia as they stood near the water. Because of the song. He nodded, but not just that. You reminded me of my sister, her stubbornness, her precision, her ability to say more with drawings than most people say in books. Nia didn't answer, but she smiled. Then she said, I think we'll be okay now. I know you will. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the music tin. Want to hear it one more time? He nodded. She opened the lid. The melody played faint, a little warbled, but unmistakable. Jamie's lullaby, preserved through old video, converted by kindness, carried now by a girl who never met her, yet knew her by heart. They stood listening. The water gurgled. The sky deepened to rose. And in the background, Sam began to sing along, not perfectly, but with enough of the notes to matter. Later, as they packed up to leave, Nia handed Emery a small folded page. Don't open it until we're gone, she said. He slipped it into his coat without looking. They said no long goodbye, just a hug from Sam. A grin from Nia, a silent nod from Marisol, who stood at the curb with a bag over her shoulder and dignity in her posture. Then they left. Back in his apartment, Emery finally opened the page. It was a new drawing of him standing alone by the fountain, his hand outstretched to catch a falling leaf. The inscription beneath read, "Some people stay even when they leave." He closed his eyes and let the melody play one last time. The fountain still worked. Weeks later, Emery found himself walking past it again, not by intention, not by memory, but by something gentler habit. He no longer had a driver waiting on the corner or calls lined up between footsteps. The world hadn't stopped. It had just become quieter around him. The bench was empty now. No paper cups, no drawings, no cardboard notes taped to the wall behind the church. But he sat anyway. The sky was the same shade of early gray tinged with gold around the edges, as though morning had painted with a softer brush. A breeze passed cool and clean, and the water in the fountain caught the light like glass. In his coat pocket, the music tin remained. He hadn't opened it since that last afternoon. He didn't need to. The melody had made a home in him now, without chords, without performance. It lived in the small spaces, the rustle of leaves, the laughter he'd once ignored, the memory of a child saying, I draw things that might go away. Nia was gone, so was Sam. He didn't know the name of the farm, didn't ask for the address. The shelter director had said, only they left well, they left ready. That was enough. He looked at the edge of the bench where Nia used to sit always with one knee folded under the other, pencil poised like a conductor's baton. He smiled faintly, remembering how she'd once asked him why he kept showing up. And he still didn't quite know, only that he had. A woman passed by, pushing a stroller. She didn't notice him. A boy dropped a juice box. His mother picked it up, scolded him gently, then ruffled his hair. Life continued soft and untouched. But Emery no longer felt untouched by it. He slid a folded envelope from his inner coat pocket and placed it on the bench. No name on it, just a drawing, 3 stick figures under a tree with a 4th sitting, quietly nearby, holding a tiny sun in one hand. He stood. He didn't wait. He didn't watch. He just left it there. And as he stepped away, the wind picked up slightly. It carried the sound of the fountain, the sound of water meeting stone. A melody with no instrument. A song played once, then remembered forever. He paused at the end of the plaza, turned back for just a moment, not to search for someone, but to feel. And in that pause, he thought, some people arrive when you need to remember what kindness feels like. Others leave once you've remembered. Then he kept walking, not fast, not slow, just forward.